The following is a hockey podcast out of Vancouver and Surrey, British Columbia. It'll only consist of a lot of puck talk and even more BS, or in actual words, banter and satire. Enjoy, and as always, go Canucks go.
Canuck fans have been waiting for this moment, and now it's finally here.
You're Locked On Canucks, your daily podcast on the Vancouver Canucks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome to another episode of Locked On Canucks. My name is Trevor Beggs, sports reporter for Daily High Vancouver. Coming to you here on Locked On Canucks, part of the #1 sports podcast network in the world. And what a coincidence, because here we are talking about the worst team in the NHL. Yes, they lose another game tonight to the Ottawa Senators. And hey, round of applause for that quickly. Okay, let's go. Because not only did the Canucks lose, but the Winnipeg Jets also winning right now. The Canucks could end this night 4 points clear of the NHL basement, a place that this team needs to be in to move forward with the future. And even better news today if you're a Vancouver Canucks fan. Look, the Elias Pettersson debacle in Vancouver. And look, I was fooled. I was scammed. I believed in Pettersson when he signed that contract. Look, this guy producing at an elite level. And of course, it has not been that way for nearly 2 years now. We're 2 years removed from Pettersson being named third star of the month, 13 goals in 14 games. But Pettersson arguably on his best heater since that stretch. So on tonight's episode, we'll touch on the game a little bit. But what I really want to touch on is the news that came out of around the Vancouver Canucks today. And that is that the Canucks are willing to trade Elias Pettersson. And for the guys that want Pettersson out of town, this one's for you. Yes, Elias Pettersson, that of the $11.6 million contract per season. The player who is the 8th highest paid player in the NHL right now, not producing anywhere close to what he needs to do based on what he's being paid. And again, there was a report about a couple weeks ago from Patrick Johnson of the Province that suggested that teams were calling on Elias Pettersson. There's interest in this player. I know a lot of people in this market don't like the player. I don't blame them for what's gone on in the past couple of seasons. But this is still a good hockey player. And clearly, teams around the NHL see that and believe that he would thrive in a different environment outside of Vancouver. But now today, Darren Dreger of TSN reporting that the Canucks are willing and listening on Elias Pettersson. So not only is there outside interest for teams wanting to get Elias Pettersson, but there is now interest within the organization, reportedly, that the Canucks may be willing to move off of EP 11.6. Here's the quote from Dreger. It said, the Vancouver Canucks are listening and will listen to interest in Elias Pettersson, despite believing that if he gets a change of scenery and a new start somewhere else, he's going to thrive in a new environment. And I believe that is the case. Thrive, it's a relative term. I don't think this guy is ever getting back to the 100-point player that he was. But backers of PD in this market will say, look at the wingers he's playing with. Jake DeBrusk, Linus Karlsson. To that I say, and I was even combing through his stats earlier today, between the 21-22 and 23-24 season, a 3-season stretch, arguably in which he played his best hockey, right? Almost an MVP-like level from when Kyle and I first started Locked On Canucks at the end of the 22-23 season. Some of his main wingers over that stretch were, of course, Andrei Kuzmenko was good, but we're looking at Ilya Mikheyev, Nils Höglander, his buddy, but as we've seen, Nils Höglander, not an elite offensive producer. Maybe we'll get a bit into Nils Höglander towards the end of the show as well. And Anthony Beauvillier. I know it was a short time in Vancouver, but Anthony Beauvillier spent nearly half of his even strength minutes playing alongside Elias Pettersson. The point is, Pettersson produced at an elite level before with guys who were middle six NHL wingers. Jake DeBrusk and Linus Karlsson at this stage of his career, they're not that much different from the Mikheyevs and the Höglanders and the Beauvilliers of the world. And for the fancy stats people, I'll pull up the card here for the YouTube viewers on the podcast side. Let me tell you about it. Elias Pettersson, this card changes daily, man. Shout out to Jay Fresh, friend of the show. Elias Pettersson still performing at an elite defensive level, which means something. Because if a team's going to acquire him, he is likely going to be one of the best second line centers in the NHL. I think that's just where he is at this stage of his career. A guy who you can trust in a matchup role, but also a guy who might get some more opportunity playing with better players. Maybe a little less responsibility depending on how a team wants to utilize him. But the point is, Elias Pettersson has been good defensively, but the offense just hasn't been there. I mean, look, the finishing is pretty high, but what tells you about the offense? His even strength offense, the 27th percentile of the NHL. In the red, baby. And the fact that his finishing is high tells you he's barely getting any chances. And I know you could say this, the circumstances of the Canucks play into that. The matchup role plays into that. These are true things. But the fact of the matter is, Pettersson's shooting the puck at one of the lowest marks of his career. He's starting to shoot the puck a bit more right now, though. And look, this is just a guy. It's time. It's time for the Vancouver Canucks to move off of Elias Pettersson. And look, he holds all the cards. But I've said this before, and this is nothing but a gut feeling. I think Pettersson would be willing to have a change of scenery. I think he'd be willing to get out of the Vancouver market, leave this saga of his life behind, and start somewhere fresh. Preferably start in a city where hockey isn't the biggest deal. And look, I know they're the team that gets bandied about the most, but the Carolina Hurricanes, they always come to mind in this situation. They're one of the few contenders out there that have still a good chunk of cap space. You know, in terms of projected cap space, they have the eighth most projected cap space in the NHL right now. And look, they got a player in Jesperi Kotkaniemi who not only can you trade Pettersson to Carolina, get some assets back. Look, and I'm still one of those believers that if you're going to trade Elias Pettersson, you need to get assets back. I'm not talking about a Mikko Rantanen like Hall here. But you should be able to get a first and maybe a B-level prospect or a second-round pick, something like that. But with the Carolina Hurricanes, maybe you also take on Jesperi Kotkaniemi's contract and juice the deal a little bit more. I mean, Jesperi Kotkaniemi making over $4 million a season for 4 more years, and he's barely an NHL player. He could barely crack the Carolina Hurricanes lineup. You're telling me that a cup contender like the Carolina Hurricanes wouldn't be willing to move off of that player and that salary if it meant paying up to get Elias Pettersson returned to that lineup? And it's an organization that's been high on Pettersson for a long time. It's an organization that looks at things like this, the fancy stats, the cards, and an organization that probably believes that if they put Pettersson in a better situation with a better coach, they can get the most out of him. And look, regardless of if it's Carolina or somebody else, the fact of the matter is now is the time to get Elias Pettersson out of Vancouver, or at least explore it. And I think one really telling thing for me today, and it's not the first time it's happened. It happened when I was in the scrum with Adam Foote about a month ago, and it happened again today. One of the Ottawa reporters asked Adam Foote, which players in the team have stepped up in a leadership role in the absence of Quinn Hughes? And Adam Foote name-checked 5 guys. First off, he mentioned Filip Hronek, right? Good old chatty Phil. He mentioned Brock Besser. He mentioned Tyler Myers. He mentioned Marcus Pettersson. And he mentioned Connor Garland. He mentioned 5 guys. And none of them were named Elias Pettersson. Maybe he just forgot. But I think it's pretty telling that it's now the second time where Foote's been asked about leadership in the dressing room outside of Quinn Hughes, and he has not mentioned Elias Pettersson. And look, I'm not saying this guy's not necessarily a leader, but it'd be nice to get a little coach bump, no? Especially after Rick Tocchet kind of threw him under the bus and said, meet me at the 50-yard line. I've done what I can for Pettersson. After Quinn Hughes said that there's nothing he can do to help Elias Pettersson. But it's clearly not the case in Vancouver. He's clearly not a locker room leader, based on what we're hearing. Maybe someone in the dressing room would tell me different. But from everything we've heard, Pettersson is not a leader in that locker room. Look, this guy, he needs a change of scenery. The Canucks need to get some assets and turn the page on this saga. And maybe they can do so while Pettersson is heating up. Right? We're not talking about 5 goals in his last 9 games. Some of them of the variety that we haven't seen in quite some time. I know he was all alone in the slot tonight when he scored that goal. But we saw the Ripper against Buffalo. We saw that goal tonight. He's doing some things creatively, even going back a little bit. That goal against San Jose where he was falling down and he scored. He's scoring some eye-catching goals. The defensive metrics are there. I'm telling you, he keeps this up. a team is going to want to take the bet. $11.6 million ain't going to mean as much as the cap continues to go up. And a team, again, like Carolina, that's been efficient with their contracts, has the room for a guy like Elias Pettersson, can slot him in as a 1B center or a 2 center and make it work. So let me know in the comments, is now the time to trade Elias Pettersson? Do you think the Canucks will actually trade him this season? It's one thing for Darren Dreger to say it. We'll see if the Canucks can back it up with their actions. Coming up on the other side, let's get a bit more into the game. A bit more into some news and notes around this team as well. Some interesting details about Kiefer Sherwood as well. One touch on Z Boyem, Nils Höglander, and of course your comments. That's all coming up here on Locked On Canucks. Before we get back to it, let's shout out our friends over at FanDuel. And I always want to sing the song. Bum 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 bum. That's my kid's favorite song, the Fox NFL Sunday theme song. And man, oh man, I listen to that in the morning. I whip up the FanDuel app, drinking some coffee. That's living right there, man. And I'll be living this Saturday with the Seahawks facing the San Francisco 49ers. Unfortunately, I actually have to cover the Canucks game during this game. But regardless, I'll be enjoying it as best I can. FanDuel's got you covered for all the action because right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside the app. Wow. Each game day, you'll see a pack loaded with multiple profit boosts. You can apply the bets you like most. You make your picks and then apply your profit boost and go after even bigger payouts to get the ball rolling. And whether it's the same game parlays, the live in-game bets, FanDuel, they got it all. And it's so damn easy to use on the app. So go check it out. Go visit FanDuel.com, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. All right, we're back here on Locked On Canucks. Your Canucks every damn day. Through the good times and the bad, okay? We'll see how long maybe Kyle Bowden's is going to stay in Mexico, all right? Maybe I'm short a co-host. Who knows? But we got you covered through the good times and the bad. Because, I want to be here through the bad times like I've been here through the bad times, like most of you have been here through the bad times, because it makes the good times that much sweeter. Not too much of that going on right now, but let's see if we can find some positivity, baby, in the comments. Segmina in the comments saying, if Elias Pettersson had ruined my organization, I'd go hire Babcock. Andrew saying, we need a real coach. And I just go back to Dan Jardine's comment from yesterday's postcast. Protect Adam Foote at all costs, all right? The tank commander himself. He was the tank commander of the game yesterday. Maybe the tank commander of the game tonight as well. Scratching Tom Willander. P.O. Joseph gets a second game. It was a bit of a rough night for P.O. Joseph. I know he threw a big hit in the second there, but yeah, that's a tank commander type thing to do. And even when you look at the deployments tonight for the Vancouver Canucks, it was really a steady dose of all four lines rolling out there. And we haven't seen a lot of that from Vancouver this season. The highest guy on ice time, Connor Garland, played 17:31. The low man on ice time, Liam Ogren, played 13:15. Not a big difference there. And I know there wasn't a lot of special teams time tonight, so that played into the results a little bit. But interesting that more or less all the Canucks played the same amount throughout the game tonight. But Z Boyem is a guy I wanted to highlight because I thought he did have a hell of a game tonight. Really tilted possession when he was on the ice. The Canucks, even though they got shellacked tonight, right? What were the shots? 32-11 after two periods? When Z Boyem was on the ice against Tim Stützle, the pride of Germany, the Canucks out-attempted the Ottawa Senators 10-2 when Tim Stützle and his line were on the ice. Z Booyah, baby! And look, I'm sure Adam Foote's going to say something along the lines of, if he was asked about it, he played well after he got that reset. That time in the press box helped him out. Maybe that's true, but this Canucks season is already very unwatchable. And Z Boyem is a much better player than Pierre-Olivier Joseph. You don't need to be playing Pierre-Olivier Joseph unless you're trying to tank, which is why Adam Foote I got to do it, man. Adam Foote gets the tank commander of the game. Let's touch on the go to the game a little later on. I think it's fairly obvious tonight, but I want to touch first on Kiefer Sherwood. Kiefer the Reefer Sherwood. Has Kiefer Sherwood played his last game as a Vancouver Canuck? You know, Adam Foote said yesterday that Kiefer Sherwood probably out 1 to 3 weeks. A bit of a gap there, Footy. And if it does push close to that 3-week gap, you're really inching up against the Olympic break, right? We're already at the midway point of January. The Canucks' last game, I believe, is February 4th. I know NHL games, the last day is February 5th before the break. There's a chance that Kiefer Sherwood has played his last game for the Vancouver Canucks. And I just want to take a moment, man, just to say, I'll miss you, buddy.
Yeah, buddy.
I will miss Kiefer Sherwood as a Vancouver Canuck. The most fun player on a lot of nights, a heart and soul guy. I know Kyle had the episode where I was off stroking my slong in Alberta about how the Canucks maybe should look into trading Besser and DeBrusk and keeping Garland and Sherwood. I see where Kyle was coming from on that one, but the Canucks need to get assets, man. And I think later this week I will talk a bit more about what I think Connor Garland's value could be. That is a tougher one with the extension. But Kiefer Sherwood, a clear and easy to trade candidate. And it sounds like the Canucks could be getting closer to a deal. So Chris Johnston. On the Chris Johnston show. Whoa, what's with the ego on that guy? Are you kidding me?
I'll be damned.
Chris Johnston on the Chris Johnston show, Steve Dangle Podcast Network. He mentioned yesterday that the Vancouver Canucks have received a couple offers for Kiefer Sherwood that have been a second-round pick and what he calls a pretty good prospect. That might be what the Canucks have to get for Kiefer Sherwood. We'll see. Of course, they haven't said yes because they're sticking to their hope, their wish of a first-round pick. I still think it's possible to get a first-round pick for Kiefer Sherwood, but it's interesting to hear that the offers are filtering in for a second and a pretty good prospect. And look, we talked on the show a couple days ago, maybe late last week, about how the Sharks were in on Kiefer Sherwood. And, you know, one of the proposed packages or players I suggested were like a Philip Bystedt, right? Point per game, big young center in the AHL, 2022 draft, so he's 21 years old now, or a player like Kasper Haltunen. And look, I'm not sure if the San Jose Sharks are the destination. I think if they are, an extension has to be involved with Kiefer Sherwood. I don't think the Sharks are trading for a rental at this stage of their development. Unless they just say, hey, Kiefer the Reefer Sherwood, get us into the playoffs, help us out, help the boys get some experience. That could be on the table for the San Jose Sharks. But my point is, it sounds like there are going to be teams out there willing to pay a second and a pretty good prospect. But hopefully the Canucks can strike up the bidding a little bit. You know, Bruce Garrioch of the Ottawa Citizen reported today, over 20 teams are interested in Kiefer Sherwood. So basically every team that is in the playoffs or in the race wants Kiefer Sherwood on their team. Are any of them willing to give up a first-round pick? And right now there are 4 teams that are in the playoff hunt that have multiple first-round picks. Those 4 teams are the Boston Bruins, the San Jose Sharks, the Seattle Kraken, and the New York Islanders. If you're going to get a first-round pick from a team, I've said it before, I'll say it again, you're probably going to have to target one of those teams that has multiple first-round picks. So we'll see if anything happens with Kiefer Sherwood. My hunch says that this extends past the Olympic break. That's just my hunch. I know Canucks management has liked to get their work done early. It wouldn't surprise me if they want to trade him, you know, before the trade deadline. I think they'd be smart to trade him before the trade deadline, but maybe I'm losing some faith in this organization, man. And can you blame me? Look at what's happened in this market in the past 12 to 16 months. It hasn't even been a year since the JT Miller trade was consummated. A lot has happened in this market. So I don't think Kiefer Sherwood's played his last game for the Vancouver Canucks. I'd probably put the odds at 30% chance he's played his last game for the Canucks. But my hunch is this is going to extend past the trade deadline. I hate being right. I've been right a few times before. I think about the trade deadline last year where I said, I think the Canucks are keeping Brock Besser. And I hated being right about that. But I was right, and it was a mistake. Speaking of Brock Besser, let's get to a comment before we get to the other side here on Locked On Canucks. Let's see it. William Shortreed here in the comments saying Besser might get a second and a roster player. DeBrusque might get a fourth in the prospect. Man, I think Brock Besser has very little trade value right now. I'm not even sure if you could trade Besser for a 5th round pick. With that contract and the way he has played, the Canucks are in a really tough spot with Brock Besser. I actually think Jake DeBrusque might be a more tradable asset right now. Both players have been shit for this team for a while, but at least DeBrusque has some utility on the power play. There's a little, how do you say it? A little less risk with the contract. It's a little shorter. It's a little less money, and they're basically the same player. I think with DeBrusque, you probably have to take a bad contract back. I keep thinking of the Edmonton Oilers, right? He's always got ties there with Louis DeBrusque doing the color commentary there. Could you get a pick and Andrew Mangiapane back to make the cap numbers work? I think that's the type of deal you're looking for with Jake DeBrusque. With Brock Besser, I have no idea. I think Brock Besser, you would be very, very hard pressed to trade him right now. You think at last deadline the Canucks were getting offers for Brock Besser? You should see what happens now when you call teams trying to sell Brock Besser. That guy, he needs to do something to rehabilitate his trade value, because right now I think he's got next to none. On the other side, let's get to our go to the game. A couple other items I want to get to as well. Some of your comments. Maybe we'll talk about getting hoggy with it, baby. That's coming up next on Locked On Canucks. No more of the status quo, okay? No more of the status quo in Vancouver. But the quo I am a fan of is our sponsor here on Locked On Canucks. And quo, new year, new systems. This is the time when a lot of us look at the messier parts of how we run our business and think there has to be a better way. And there is. Streamlining your communications is one of the quickest upgrades you can make. Wham bam. Thank you, Jam. That's why today's episode is brought to you by Quo, spelled Quo, the smarter way to run your business communications. Because when your team is reachable, organized, and communicating in one place, you're not just working cleaner, you're creating more opportunities to connect with customers. Your whole team can call and text from one shared business number. Whoa. So nothing gets missed. It works right from your phone or your computer, and you can even keep your existing number. My God, it's that easy, eh? It's no surprise Quo is the #1 rated business phone system on G2, trusted by more than 90,000 businesses. Wow. From solo operators to growing teams, make this the year where no opportunity and no customer slips away. Try Quo for free, plus get 20% off your first 6 months when you go to quo.com/lockedonnhl. That's quo.com/lockedonnhl. Quo, no missed calls and no missed customers. All right, we're back here on Locked On Canucks. Your Canucks every damn day. And let's get to our combat, baby. Let's go. All right, let's see. Let's just shout out to Andrew, man. Andrew, one of the first everydayers here on Locked On Canucks. He's saying it's been hard to watch lately, but Andrew, we got you covered here on Locked On Canucks if you don't want to watch a single game, because it has been hard to watch right now. But the Tank Master doing his job. Andrew Ong saying in the comments, I think Foot will definitely stay for the tank. And he agrees that he'll finish his 2-year contract. And let's throw some into the conversation here. Beerman Posse. Oh, I like that name. This regime is worser than Benning. I'm not quite there yet, but it's interesting that this is on pace to be the worst season since the Messier era for the Vancouver Canucks. Not even Jim Benning had a team this dysfunctional. You know, at least I think in the Willie D era, I think Willie D was a better coach than Adam Foote. He was better with the X's and O's. He was also safer. He also had the Sedins there for leadership that probably gave a boost to an undermanned team there. But this Canucks team right now, it is in a sadder state than they were at the depths of the Jim Benning era, because I always look at 2016 and 17 as the low point, because Bo Horvat was the only prospect really playing. Sure, you had Brock Besser, but he was a 23rd overall pick. You weren't thinking he was a savior. Besser comes in as a rookie. Then all of a sudden you got Pettersson. Then you draft Hughes. Now the future's starting to look a bit better. right? But that 2016-17 season, I look at that as the most depressing one. And of course, it got more infuriating as it went on with Jim Benning in charge. But I haven't seen the same level of malpractice with this regime as I did with the Jim Benning regime. I'm not quite there yet to say it's worse than the Jim Benning regime, but I think it's fair to say that this might be a darker period for the Vancouver Canucks. With trading Quinn Hughes, with your top guys in Elias Pettersson and Brock Besser in their primes, not playing up to standard, not playing up to their contracts, not playing like leaders, not carrying this team. I think these are darker times, but I don't know if this regime has done a worse job than Jim Benning. I think that's, for me, still too early to say. Patrick Alvina and Jim Rutherford, don't talk to me and say, hold my beer. But we're not there yet, I don't think. But let me know in the comments what you think. Is this regime worse than the Benning era? I want to touch on Nils Höglander quickly, okay? Nils Höglander now pointless in 13 games. And look, I know he dealt with the injury, but now we're talking about a player in Nils Höglander who has had 2 good seasons in the NHL? I mean, I was kind of stunned today when I saw a post online. 5 years ago today, Nils Höglander scored his first goal for the Vancouver Canucks. 5 years ago. In that time, the Canucks have had 4 head coaches. They've traded 4 OEL and then bought him out. They've missed the playoffs in all but 1 season. I think they've had 11 different goaltenders playing net at that time. Shout out to Demko's glass knees there. Yeah, a lot has gone wrong for Nils Höglander in Vancouver, but just looking at the player now, after that great breakout season as a young player in 2020-21, 13 goals, 27 points, he's really had 1 good season after that, right? 21-22 didn't go well. 22-23, he ends up playing most of the season in the minors. Comes back with a vengeance in 23-24, signs that extension, 3 years, $3 million. And then last year has 1 goal in his first 40 games, picks up towards the end, but ends with 8 goals and 25 points. And now pointless here in 13 games. And look, it's now been a big enough sample size where you're starting to wonder, who is Nils Höglander? Because much like Brock Besser, when you're looking at trade assets on this team, Brock Besser should be better than he is. Nils Höglander should be better than he is. And that line tonight, Höglander, Ratu, and Evander Kane, they got shelled out there. They were not good. I just wonder exactly who is Nils Höglander. We thought he could be a good bottom 6 guy who could complement top 6 players, play up the lineup. And I know there's a lot of sadness going on in Vancouver right now. I still would like to see, I know we saw it for about a half a game against Detroit, Höglander, Besser, and Pettersson. Besser and Pettersson aren't the same players who we thought they were. But man, oh man, Nils Höglander, another guy just looking lost out there. Now, I just think sticking with this Bud and Petey, probably put Karlsson on that line over Besser right now. Let Garland carry Besser. He's doing a pretty good job of that, all things considered. And just see if there's anything there. I mean, the DeBrusk Pettersson thing, I don't know why they keep trying to shove that down our throats. It's not working. It's not fun. Just roll Höglander, Pettersson, and Karlsson and see what they can do. They've had some success in limited NHL minutes as well. I know the nerds out there might come at me and say, "Oh, DeBrusk and Karlsson and Pettersson, they've controlled possession and they've had good numbers." And that game against Boston, I don't want to see it. I don't think it works. I don't think it's fun. Karlsson and Pettersson, I think there's something there. But Jake DeBrusk, you can just keep on the 4th line and put him on PP1. That's about as good. That's about where Jake DeBrusk belongs, to be quite frank. All right, go to the game quickly. It's Kevin Lankinen, man. Doing his best. I think on the broadcast they called his best Dominic Hasek impression. Man, Kevin Lankinen, baby. He's spanking him. The Canucks still tanking him. And I'm thanking him. Because, man, I appreciate a good goaltending performance, and Kevin Lankinen was on one tonight. I know a couple goals from defensemen. Maybe you want 1 or 2 of those back. But he was rock solid tonight, stopping 38 of 40 shots for your Vancouver Canucks. Kevin Lankinen definitely gets the GOAT of the game for me tonight. Maybe I should give it to Elias Pettersson. Let's pump up the guy's value, okay? The red-hot Elias Pettersson, like the show says. 5 goals now in his past 9 games. Boom, bam. Trade him to Carolina for Jesperi Kotkaniemi, 2 first and a second. Boom. Done. Get him out of here. Whew. A couple comments before we wrap up here and get out of here on Locked On Canucks. Hey, rhymes with Joe Mama finishing off the rap for me, saying Beggsy's wanking him. Hey, man, it doesn't take me a lot to get excited, okay? Maybe that's why I've been able to live through Canucks fandom for quite some time. I don't know if we got a troll here in the comments. We got Armand Alan saying extend Sherwood. What? And ZBM will be a bust? What? What? Unbelievable, man. Look, I worry about ZBM because of the hype on this kid. I don't think he's going to be a bust. I don't think he's going to be the next Quinn Hughes. But I think he's got some juice to his game. He is a fun player to watch. I want more fun players on my hockey team, man. And ZBM, I certainly believe can be a top pair NHL defenseman. Let's go to Bob Bluger for one of the last ones here. Poor man's Burrows, Linus, Hot Carlson. Whoo, steamy baby. Let's go. Linus Carlson. Hey, the Canucks' most productive forward since scoring his first goal on November 9th. Maybe I'll check up if that's still true quickly. But look, I think Linus Carlson has earned a role in the top six, and not necessarily because, he should be a top six player, but name me 4 Canucks forwards who are better than him right now, or 4 Canucks wingers who are better than him right now. Like, it's Connor Garland, it's Kiefer Sherwood if he's healthy, and then it's Linus Carlson. And I know they're all right wingers, but man, oh man, Linus Carlson absolutely earning his role at the Vancouver Canucks right now. And look at this, all right? Linus Carlson, since scoring his first goal on November 9th, still leads all Canucks forwards with 10 goals and 17 points in 29 games. Elias Pettersson not catching up in 8 less games missed due to injury, but Linus Carlson has been one of the best Canuck players for a while now. And like John Tortorella said, that's good for Linus Carlson, and it's not good for the Vancouver Canucks. I'm going to throw the last comment to Boom Scoom, and then maybe we'll pick this up on the next episode of Locked On Canucks. How often are rebuilds successful? I would say most of the time. Now, it depends what your bar for success is. If your bar for success is making the playoffs in consecutive years and being in the Stanley Cup conversation, I would say most rebuilds are successful. I don't like the Buffalo example being thrown out because I think Buffalo they made a lot of mistakes to compound their issues. Buffalo, they were their own undoing there. But you look at teams around the NHL, I mean, man, oh man, Montreal's pulled it off. Colorado had to pull it off as well. The Florida Panthers pulled it off. The Vegas Knights won a goddamn Stanley Cup with a bunch of nobodies on their team. Washington, Pittsburgh, they won Stanley Cups due to being bad and getting Ovechkin and Crosby in that organization. Of course, the Edmonton Oilers, probably without their own mismanagement, they should have won Stanley Cups with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. So the point is, being bad, picking at the top of the draft, it works. And just having a half-competent management team around you can result in you winning a Stanley Cup. That's it for me here on Locked On Canucks. I'm Trevor Beggs. If you like the show, make sure you hit the goddamn like button. Subscribe to the channel. Helps us out a lot. On the podcast side, go follow us. Leave a 5-star review. And we'll be picking up tomorrow here on Hump Day on Locked On Canucks.
You're Locked On Canucks, your daily podcast on the Vancouver Canucks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.